Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Rising Laterally podcast. This is Arjun Sachdev.
And this is Jay Ballou. We hope you find something here that offers you new meaning or a fresh perspective.
If you do, we encourage you to give it life.
Be bold.
Experiment.
And most importantly, bring it into the interactions with the people you surround yourself with.
And see what happens. Michael Patterson, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, glad to be on.
No, we
Very
appreciate
happy to have you on.
We're super excited. I know that I've been following you for the last 5 or 6 months on LinkedIn, and anytime there's any cannabis-related content, you're on it. Anything insightful?
I'm there.
You're there. You're absolutely there. And I guess that's what happens when you're the CEO of a cannabis research company who's trying to push, normalize and legalize and develop cannabis not only here in the States but around the world. So you're a perfect person to have on the show right now, because I want to start with what happened with the latest series of events. You take a look at what happened on election night. We had 5 more states pass cannabis measures: New Jersey, South Dakota, Montana, Arizona, and Mississippi. So now in terms of legal recreational cannabis, there's access to north of 30% of the U.S. population. And as we speak, even though there wasn't a Democratic blue wave sweep through Senate and the House, it looks like Biden is on the brink of taking over the White House. So what's your take on what took place and what it means moving forward?
That is a great question. So glad to be on, guys. First of all, if you heard the introduction, please follow me on LinkedIn. It's Michael Patterson, U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development. My goal is to educate as much as I can because I want more and more people to get into this field. Right now, we have 250,000 people working in the cannabis industry in America. We project that that's probably going to be north of 500,000 to 1 million within the next 5 to 10 years. This is a career that has future and has growth, but you need to understand what you're getting into. So to answer your question about the election, what I saw on the election with cannabis is all about unity. And everybody talks about how divided we are and everything. Let me tell you, Quinnipiac did a study last year. 93% of Americans want medical cannabis legal.
Wow.
93%. Now, we don't agree at 93% on anything in this country, okay? So what I can tell you is we were 5 for 5 in the vote, and what that shows me is the people, no matter what party, this forward. And so somebody who's been in this industry since 2013, who basically was ostracized from my healthcare career. I'm a licensed occupational therapist. I'm a licensed nursing home administrator in 4 states. I used to run nursing homes, pharmacies, laboratories in excess of $230 million. I was ostracized from my career when I came out being the cannabis space. So to me, I've lived the discrimination. I've lived the stigma. When you literally come up to people and they say, you tell them what you do, and they literally hide their kids from you because they think you're gonna infect their kids, to where now they see me and they're like, oh, really?
They're asking for it.
Are you hiring? Are you hiring? That's so neat. But I think one of the things that as Americans we don't see is, especially regarding cannabis, is how does the world see us? And so one of the things that we're involved in with my company, we have a joint venture with a company called Gmp Pharma, which is cultivates, processes, and distributes medical cannabis globally out of Lesotho, which is spelled Lesotho, which is a country inside of South Africa. So we actually are operating there. We took over a facility that was formerly owned by Canopy Growth. Canopy Growth pulled out of Africa in April of 2020. They also put out of Latin America in April 2020. So the international side is what a lot of Americans don't understand is the international movement moves when we move. And so what I hear a lot of people overseas saying is they're very blunt, because there's not many Americans dealing with cannabis overseas, unlike outside of me. And I've spoken internationally, which is always fun. But the big sentiment I get as an American is, so what are you guys going to get off your ass and legalize it? And I'm like, hey, man, we're trying, okay? We're pushing. We're doing it state by state. We're getting there. But the reason they're saying that is they said innovation doesn't happen in other countries typically. They wait for America to move it forward. And then for this to move forward on a global stage, America's got to get in the game on a global level. So what I see locally, meaning inside the United States, is this is a game changer. And the number one reason is because of New Jersey. Okay, New Jersey, love them or hate them. Love them or hate them. I used to have a nursing home in Red Bank. Let me tell you, quick little New Jersey joke. Every time I went up there, every single patient and every single staff member said, "Where are you from? Alabama?" And I said, "Not everybody from the South is from Alabama." And they go, "Same difference."
Yeah.
So I'm from North Carolina, but I live in Florida now, but that's the accent. But yeah, New Jersey, the reason New Jersey is so impactful is because it's recreationally legal. Now, let's look at our geography and how many states touch New Jersey. So if you're a state touching New Jersey, right. So you got 3 states, but then you got Rhode Island and Connecticut right up there. Now they're sandwiched between New York and Delaware and Pennsylvania. Those states are going to have to go recreationally legal. Why? Because now you're getting into a situation where it's unenforceable. You're not going to sit there on every bridge and every tunnel to sit there and check everybody's car when they drive across the road to get weed in New Jersey. So that's going to cause everybody seeing what they're calling a domino effect. You're going to see that domino effect permeate all the way down to Maryland and Delaware. It'll stop at Virginia because we're the South, can't go too fast. Got to keep it slow.
That's where the tobacco is.
Tobacco Road. And so what you're seeing is Virginia has already legalized. They're just getting started. West Virginia, our company was part of a group that won a cultivation permit there last month. We're excited about that. They're just getting started there. Ohio is slow to get started, but the other states coming along, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, they're going to take some time. But what we see is this is the start of legalization across America. Whether you believe it or not, the new administration, if Biden does end up winning, then what's going to happen? We have a divided Senate now. So we can't just push through everything. I think the Republicans who are listening to this will probably be happy. And you know what? Hopefully we can have a new accord of unity, because there's enough people in the Senate, in the House to get this passed. And there's enough states that are Republican who've already passed cannabis. So I think the question is, how do we legalize? And so these 5 states that are now legal, this has now increased the conversation in D.C. So the new session that's going to start in January, if Biden does win, I think it's going to be one of the things that's front and center, because Chuck Schumer in the Senate has already said he wants to do that. Of course, he's not going to be the Senate Majority Leader, but we have our company has an entire plan on how to help America move this forward that's going to be beneficial to as many people as possible.
No, that's awesome. Great work and great update there. So you mentioned 2021 just late in your comments there. So do you think that there might be some sort of reform in the banking that also is related to this? And does that come in the form of a COVID relief package that they might work on? How do you think it might play out?
I think that's a good analysis about the COVID relief package. I think that's a possibility. I think they're going to go back to the SAFE Act, the one they already had. And I'm work very closely with a company called ICS, which is Integrated Compliance Solutions. They're getting ready to go public in Canada. So if you're into any stocks, it's Integrated Compliance Solutions. Their website is icslv.com. Their headquarters are actually in Las Vegas, but they're going public on the Canadian Securities Exchange. These guys wrote the software that banks use to take marijuana money. So they keep them compliant. They deal with AML, which is anti-money laundering, and KYC, know your customer. So they deal with that. And so they're on the front lines with us, helping with the banking issues. So they've actually been to DC. They've been lobbying. So yes, we hope that that's going to start. Also, what you're going to see is you're going to see a decriminalization package come through. That's probably through it could be in the SAFE Act. It could be in the other one. I can't remember. Maybe it's the MORE Act. There's a couple of them going around. But what I see first is initially is decriminalization will go first, because I think that's the easiest thing to get through. There's going to be prison reform in some way, shape, or form. I think the Republicans have actually said they're willing to do that in certain aspects. Then the banking reform will come next. And this is the kicker. Once the money flows, it's all on stage. We're all moving forward, because we all know in the cannabis space, the hardest thing is to get money. So I had to raise. We were doing a license in Florida. We can't do it yet. It's a long story. It's been under state litigation now for 3 years. But it took me 2 years to raise almost $1 million for an illegal business operating in the United States. So it's a little challenging. So now with the stigma, if we get the SAFE Act passed, and I think it has good legs, that's a start. Now, what we see is a roadmap of small steps to get to federal legalization. We're promoting to legalize medical at the federal level. We're not promoting to legalize recreational. And the reason is we want to leave that up to the states, because we're still the United States of America, and I don't think a lot of states want that pushed on them. It's kind of like blue laws, if you're not probably from the South, but when I was growing up, we had blue laws which says alcohol was illegal, or you couldn't buy it in certain counties in North Carolina. You could possess it, but you couldn't buy it. So that's kind of what I see happening eventually, to where if we can get to a legal aspect or structure on the national level, that's where medical is going to help recreational, even if recreational is not 100% legal, because we need a medical structure in order to get a general consensus on rules, because we have 35 states and 35 states have 35 different laws, and it just doesn't work. So ironically, from my background running nursing homes, is the way the federal government works, they typically have a federal standard and then they have a state standard, and you have to follow whatever regulation is the most stringent. So what I see coming through, and what we plan on doing whatever we can to let the new administration know this, is you really need to set it up to where we need a universal standard at the federal level for lab testing, proper lab testing, equipment, to calibrate that equipment, because we're getting different lab tests for an older equipment and so forth and so on. We need to standardize how you ship this across state lines. We need to standardize from a Medicare and Medicaid aspect, from an insurance aspect, and also we need to standardize international trade. We currently ship hemp outside the United States, or ship it from the U.S. to out, to other countries, and it's a huge pain in the butt. A lot of times it gets stuck in customs. When it comes in, I just shipped in a sample of CBDA in from Colombia, and it's currently getting testing. That went through fine. It came through FedEx. It's just like any other business. And so this is where our goal is, to be honest, is to get to where cannabis is boring. Because if cannabis is boring, then that means it's running smoothly and there's no news about it. And so I can tell you on personal experience here in Florida, we passed medical cannabis in 2016, and the world was going to end. The sky was going to fall. And now in 2020, nobody even cares about it. Like, it doesn't even register in media at all. The public doesn't even care. And somebody put some on LinkedIn and like, this has become boring. And I was like, I forwarded, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what we want. We want it so boring that nobody pays attention. That means we've assimilated into society. And that's been our whole goal from the beginning.
You know what they should start announcing is how much the state is able to pull in revenues, and start talking about that and with a positive spin. So people, if you're going to talk about cannabis in your state, at least you're going to be talking about it in a positive sense. It's being additive. And this also goes to show, if we're talking about elections and future, thinking about the future, the 2022 midterm elections are going to be equally as important in terms of getting out there and continuing this momentum. So yeah, there's a lot, and it's awesome.
Well, let me tell you. So 2022 is Florida's year. So we were going to put on, we got the signatures to do recreational in Florida, but they didn't meet the deadline for 2020. And so they're going to have it again in 2022. And so we're going to have a big turnout here because we have a governor's race in 2022. And if you're not familiar, it's Trump's boy, Ron DeSantis, and he's most likely running against Nikki Fried. She's the Commissioner of Agriculture. She's the first Democrat elected to public office here in 20 years. The interesting thing about Commissioner Fried is she's a former, she's an attorney and a former medical marijuana lobbyist.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. So imagine having in the governor's mansion a former medical marijuana activist, and now you have recreational cannabis. You guys in California, you're spoiled. Okay, so you got it all over the place. You can buy it anywhere. Well, here we have 22 million people, which is half of your population, but we probably have close to the same amount of tourists. We have about 140, 150 million pre-COVID, of course. And so what we see is this is going to be a stepping stone for the entire East Coast, because how are you going to police it in Georgia? South Carolina, North Carolina will be fine for a while, my home state, but they'll get on the bandwagon. But what I see in 2022 is another round of legalization, to where we could possibly get to 20 states that are actually legalizing recreational. And so it's just the writing is on the wall. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And so now, to me, in 2021 at the federal level, we're going to do whatever we can to push the envelope in Washington to create a really working plan for legalization, because the hemp legalization plan, to me, was very scatterbrained and there was no focus, and we still don't have a ruling on CBD with the FDA. So I read an article about a lady in Tennessee who was arrested on a felony because she had hemp in her car and she had all the certificates in there, and she was arrested twice. And now she's suing the sheriff because she had all the documentation and she was legal. So, we're a proponent for pushing this at a federal level to benefit as many Americans as we can, because a lot of Americans have not been in this game long enough to understand all the moving parts. Well, we've been in this for so long, 8 years, and so we've seen the evolution, and so we want to make sure we have somebody at the table who can speak the language of the politicians to let them understand the big picture and how all these dots need to connect. Because what I see in the next 5 years is a bunch of American companies stepping up, and we hope we're one of those facilitators to start exporting overseas, because these people overseas would love to have our product. So, and a quick story. So we had some Australians came over from our software company called Parcel, P-A-R-S-L, and they were speaking in Las Vegas last year. So we come over and we go down. We were doing an Airbnb, and we were all staying in the house, and we go to the cereal aisle in the grocery store. Well, we've all been down it. It's not a big deal. Well, apparently in Australia, this is a big deal, because they had 3 guys videoing the entire thing. They're like, "Oh my gosh, look at all the sugar." And I said, "We do have a lot of sugar." I said, "There's 2 things that America does great. We produce a lot of sugary and processed foods, and we make a lot of weed." And they're like, you're right. And so we had to take them to all the dispensaries, because they never experienced the freedom of doing that. So, America is a leader. And so we need to go out, and there's things that we're good at. And cannabis is one of those top things that I think we're very good at. And the world needs to know how good we are. And that's what we're trying to do.
And as we talk about the future of legalization and dispensaries, could you maybe walk us through what you've coined to be Patterson's Pillars?
Sure. So the Patterson Pillars are 3 areas of what I call public safety, patient access, and commerce. And the reason I call them the Patterson Pillars, because my last name is Patterson, so I get to name it. So when you look at a system, and I do this a lot for law students, I do it a lot for the general public, and anybody looking to understand a regulatory structure. Because the way it works in the United States is the regulatory structure in a state determines the profitability of a dispensary. Okay, so you look at public safety, patient access, and commerce. So let me give you some examples. So public safety are the rules and the laws. How strict are the rules? How easy is it to get a permit? Do they allow anybody to run a dispensary? Do you have to have a background check? Patient consumer access. How many stores are allowed? Do you have too many? Do you have too little? How difficult is it to get a medical cannabis prescription or recommendation from a physician? And then commerce. Can these stores make money? Is the tax rate way too high? Do you have too many stores in one area? Do you have too less stores in one area? Do you allow for home delivery? These are the questions that come up. And so let me give you some examples of systems that, in my opinion, do not work. And so the number one goal with the 3 pillars is to find what I call as a Goldilocks zone. You want it not too strict, not too loose, just right for the people who want it. So a case example of too much commerce and too little public safety is the state of Oklahoma. Gotta love Oklahoma, but let me tell you what Oklahoma did. And I was out there. I helped get it, I was part of the team that went out there, did the press, helped get it passed. But the constitutional amendment states you cannot put any limits on the number of licenses. And the only requirements are you have to be an Oklahoma resident and pay $3,500 and pass a background check. Well, now we have about 10,000 licensed cannabis businesses in the state of Oklahoma, and there's only 4 million people. Now, for those of you who don't know the usage percentage, typically for medical cannabis, states run about anywhere between 2 and 8% of their population qualify for medical cannabis. Most of those states outside of Oklahoma are 2 to 5%. So if you have 10 million people, then you're going to have what? 500,000 if it's, no, 50,000? No, 500,000, 10% on it. Well, you'll have a little amount. I can't do my math right now. So you're going to have a little amount qualify. So if you're doing financials, you work off that number. So if you figure 5% is 500,000 people, then, or 50,000 people, then you work off your matrix of that. The problem in Oklahoma is you've got 4 million people and you have 8% that qualify. So that's close to 300,000 to 400,000 people, and you have 10,000 licensed businesses. To put that in perspective, the state I live in Florida, we have 22 million people, and we only have 22 licensed entities for cannabis.
Wow.
So it's drastically different per state. And then you get into a state like a good state with balance is the state of Pennsylvania. So the way this Pennsylvania did it, they have 25 licenses for grower processors. So you have to grow it, and you have to process it. And then they allowed for 50 dispensary licenses. Now, with each dispensary license, you can have 3 stores. So just let's make it simple. 150 stores, 25 grower processor licenses. Now they're one of the fastest growing states from start to now, meaning they passed in 2016. Usually I tell people when a state passes, like South Dakota just passed, they won't have product for 2 years. So it's just going to happen. First year.
So let me ask you a question. So you're saying that like states like Pennsylvania got a group of people together and they figured out that those are the numbers that they want to give out.
Well, it's a great question. So the way they did it is they studied all the legal language and the laws from all the other states that passed. And so everybody on the East Coast always says, we don't want to be California. They always use you in a bad way. Okay. So no offense. So what they did is they took Washington, they took New York, they took New Jersey, they took Florida, and because Florida had just passed. And so they tried to take the best of the states. And what they came up with was what I feel is the Goldilocks zone, because you have enough access now. So you can drive, there's a store typically within 20 miles of your house, no matter where you are in the state. And so that way, and then they started in April of 2016, it passed, and they had stores open and product on the shelves by January 2018. So in less than 2 years, they did the entire system. And they had no lawsuits when they announced the winning licenses. And so if you don't follow the space, typically when they announce the awards of licenses, there's usually lawsuits for people who lost. So that's just the way it is. Florida had been, and we've been in a lawsuit, not us personally, but in the state for 3 years on licenses here that still hasn't gotten resolved. So it's because there's a lot of money to be made, and there's not many licenses to be had. So finding that Goldilocks zone is difficult. What we see on the East Coast is typically we're having grower processor licenses and then separate dispensary licenses. So if anybody wonders financially where the money is, the money's in the grow and the money's in the processing. The money is really not in the stores because you have higher overhead. You have to deal with the public. Also, you have to deal with tax issues. There's a tax code called IRS 280E. And so that limits your ability to make money rather than just being in a grower or processor.
Got it. And from the public safety standpoint, if you look at a state like Oklahoma, is it just the fact that it's kind of a free-for-all that makes it a security hazard?
Well, it's a free-for-all, and you limit your standards or your the hoops you got to jump through to get a license are too low. So typically, if it's easy, have you ever heard the saying, if it's easy, everybody would do it? Well, in Oklahoma, it is easy, and everybody did do it. So that's what happened. So and that's why I tell everybody, look, the way it works in Oklahoma is basically everybody won the lottery, but you only win $5. Because what you're seeing is and let me put it in these terms. If you had 10,000 new businesses and all of these businesses have never run a business before in a new industry where they've never been in, how many are going to be successful? And on top of that, how many understand the public safety issues with their facilities and have the money to put in a security system, hire an armed guard, be able to have compliance, be able to sit there and have reputable people work for them? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So in cannabis, you have to make you have to make the regulations strict enough to not everybody does it, but you don't want to make them too strict so only the people with the most money can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So also when it comes to public safety, does that category group the doctors that are giving these licenses away, or these?
It can be. So another public safety issue, it could go over either one. Patient access is a big issue for physicians. So for example, the reason there's such high patient access in Oklahoma is you have to have a medical recommendation, but they have zero qualifying conditions. So I could go to the doctor and say, hey, I stubbed my toe. Well, you get a marijuana prescription. Have a good day. So that is the challenge, is that there's zero qualifying conditions. So any doctor can write it. So if I'm a physician, think about it. I can go in, charge cash. I can see 50 people a day, charge them $100 each. I'm making $5,000 a day. And I don't have to do all the paperwork as much as insurance. And so again, when you make it too easy, it's not always a good thing. People always say too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. And to me, Oklahoma is one of those challenges. And so what we've done as a company, we currently, one of our clients that we signed on to and work with fully now is a company called Paytrax, which is a cryptocurrency. So it was developed in Oklahoma and it's based off the law. And so we're currently in the final stages of a U.S. SEC no action letter, or to get this no action letter. And so if you're not familiar, an SEC no action letter is an approval that your cryptocurrency is legal. There's only been 2 in the U.S. history, and we've been working on this with Paytrax now for 4 years. They've been working on it for 10 years.
Wow.
So the goal of Paytrax is to be able to use it as a legal form of currency, specifically in Oklahoma, that we're going to do our beta, to be able to have dispensaries, growers, and processors be able to pay each other on their phone using a cryptocurrency. So when you go sit there and drop off 500 pounds of bud, you don't have a sack of cash beside you and feeling like a drug deal. And then that's where you decrease crime. You decrease all the problems with that. And so you have less money laundering. And the way we sold that, we got it approved by the Oklahoma Tax Commission, is because we went to the state, and you'll love this. We say, would you like to get your money from a transaction right away? And they're like, well, of course. Like, well, if you approve this, you'll be able to get your tax revenue the minute the transaction goes through. Because if you're not familiar, if you're listening, usually the states have to wait every quarter is where businesses pay their sales tax.
Wow.
So this way, if I'm the state of Oklahoma and I can get all my sales tax from cannabis immediately, then I'm loving it. Also, if you're dealing with cash run businesses, there's a huge amount of fraud around because you're dealing with cash. So if you can limit the amount of cash, you increase the tax base, because the people voted for a system that's based on a tax base. And so if you're circumventing the system and not paying your taxes, then all the money allotted to fix the social ills with cannabis taxes aren't going to work. Yeah. So that's where I talk about, you really have to have a federal system, because we have to look at all these systems and figure out a pathway forward to be able to make sure the system works for as many Americans as possible.
No, that's huge, because recently PayPal also announced that their users moving forward will be able to transact in cryptocurrency. So, I mean, I'm sure that's something that you may want to think about in terms of integrating, or you clearly are.
We're one step ahead of you. So right now, when we get the no action letter, we can go to Facebook Libra, we can go to Google, we can go to Amazon, because the biggest thing, and I've learned, I'm definitely not a crypto expert, but the biggest thing I've learned about crypto is the law. If you don't have a law standing behind your cryptocurrency, then you really don't have a currency. So, for example, in America, what makes the American dollar so strong? It's not the piece of paper, it's the law that stands behind it. So if we have a strong law behind crypto, and you have a situation where if you use your cryptocurrency and you get ripped off, you have a form of recourse. Right now, there is no form of recourse. There is no New York Stock Exchange or somebody I can go to and say, hey, this company is on your exchange and they ripped me off. What we're looking to do is not just create a cryptocurrency, but to create the legal structure for the cryptocurrency industry to thrive. So imagine if we come in and all the cryptocurrencies are traded on our exchange, and we make 1/10 of 1 penny for every transaction in the world, then I'll be able to eat tonight, because we'll have plenty of money.
Yeah.
So the projects that we work on are extremely forward thinking. And so that's one of the things that I know in being in this business, is that if you really want to truly make a large impact, you have to work on large projects and have bold new ideas. And those ideas are going to take years to complete. I mean, that's just one of many projects that we have in the works that could literally change the planet in regards to hemp and cannabis as we know it.
Yeah, and it's a very highly regulated space. It's obviously a very highly challenging space to work in right now, given that you're kind of entering an inflection point and there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome. Is that what attracted you to cannabis as you made the move over from healthcare?
That's a good question. The real reason I came over is, I can say this now because it's been 8 years. I was a closet smoker. And so, in the healthcare industry, you get drug tested all the time, and you can't tell anybody. So it's really, the healthcare world is very conservative. They don't like any change. And I came from the most conservative, being nursing homes. And, it's funny. I got to tell you a funny story. So people would ask me what I did. I'm like, I run nursing homes. I said, it's just such a glamorous business. Everybody's so dying to get involved. And they would go, ha, 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 ha. Well, so since I've been in cannabis, I was, people who see me, who knew me in my old life, are like, you just seem so happy now, and you seem so carefree. And I'm like, I worked in an industry where everybody hated you, and now I work in an industry where everybody loves you. Okay, so of course you do that. So so to answer your question, I think there's a lot of changes coming up. Actually, I apologize, Jay. I forgot the question.
Oh yeah, no, just what drew you to this space to begin with?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've been answering it. Yeah.
So, a guy named Saul Broida. That's my short answer. Saul, let me tell you who Saul was. Saul, S-A-U-L. Saul was a 94-year-old U.S. war veteran from World War II who, when I was doing home health care years ago as a therapist, I met Saul. And Saul's an interesting character. When I was treating him, he was 94 years old, and he was addicted to opiates. And the VA, he would go to VA here in Florida, and they said, you know what, you're addicted to opiates. We're going to take you off of them at 94 years old. So this is back before cannabis became legal in Florida, and he said he would go to Tallahassee. He would fight to make it legal. And so after seeing Saul, it was a straw that broke the camel's back for me, because I remember looking at Saul, I'm like, who can help a guy like that with cannabis? And the only way to do that is if you understand the regulatory structure of the current healthcare system and to be able to incorporate cannabis into that. So I needed a push. And so the push that I got was when Florida tried to legalize cannabis in 2014. So I had dabbled in it in 2013, and I started doing consulting calls after doing some research with different companies. But that's where I really started to get involved. And so my big push was Saul was a guy who got me off the couch, so to speak, and say, you need to do this, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. Because I needed to use my skills in healthcare to promote this and move this forward. Because what people may or may not understand is regulation in healthcare only increases. It never decreases. Yeah. So if cannabis is starting here and then you're going to sit there and go to here, well, if I've been in an industry that has this much regulation, and I can literally predict the future. So after going to a couple conferences and saying, you know, you can provide a lot of value here, it was a difficult, question for me, because when I got into the space, and a lot of people still think this now, is they think that you can do 3 jobs. You can grow it, you can process it, or you can sell it. And that's it. So what I had to learn is there's an entire that has to be developed for the cannabis industry to succeed. And you hit on one of them. You hit on banking, and you hit on compliance, and you hit on regulation, and you hit on a lot of different ones with technology. So what we evolved in my company, U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical Research and Development, has evolved to is to focus on the choke points of the industry to be able to move those forward for everybody. And so it took me a long time to understand that. And so that's where I mentioned the cryptocurrency. We're currently involved in, like I mentioned, in Africa, doing cultivation there to really open up the international market. We're currently working on to create a new Silicon Valley for hemp and cannabis research based in Florida. We're hoping to have that up and running by next year to really bring in R&D. We really want to create what's up in Northern Jersey with a pharmaceutical company, but do it for cannabis and really put in that R&D. If Biden wins, our goal is to get federal grant money to be able to help U.S.-based businesses come to Florida to be able to learn together, just like you guys do in Silicon Valley. So to answer your question, is that's kind of how I got started. And to me, what keeps me moving is to see guys like you coming in and women and all these types of people who are now getting into it, because in my head, I always think 5 years ahead. And so I saw it where I would be on the show with you, like not literally, but like seeing it to where it would start going mainstream. And I knew if I got in when I did, then I learned as much as I could, that I could be the guy that helps motivate other people to be able to really push this forward. And so in a way, I kind of want to do like you guys know Garyvee.
Sure. Yeah.
So Gary Vaynerchuk, if you're not familiar, Google Garyvee, really great guy. So I discovered Garyvee about 2 years ago. And it was weird because Garyvee and I are close to the same age. I'm a couple years older. And I started listening to him and I'm like, well, I've been doing all that. Everything you just said, I've already been doing it. Working all the time and chasing a dream and all this stuff. So it was interesting to hear him to say, okay, well, I'm on the right track, because in this business, if you want to do something that's never been done, you're going to go down a lot of rabbit holes because you got to figure it all out. My whole career in cannabis is this is what you want to do, go figure it out, and because maybe there is no roadmap and maybe the laws aren't even there. And so I've had to learn to really be comfortable with being uncomfortable all the time. And so I think if anybody's listening to this and you're trying to get into this space, you really need to prepare yourself to be uncomfortable. because once you can learn to be uncomfortable and not have all the answers, then you're getting in the right frame of mind. And because I don't have all the answers, I deal with stuff all the time. Like, perfect example. So today, our team, we had a conference call in Italy. We're working on a deal to do medical cannabis for the government of Italy. I've never done that before. I don't know exactly how to do it, but we have a team that all of us combined, we can do it because we're working with people who've done that before. So, these are the things that you see coming up that you can't prepare for. And so a lot of times I tell people, kind of like Garyvee does, is you just need to have a direction. And you just need to keep going to that direction and seek out the knowledge. That's why I keep telling people, follow me on LinkedIn. I give plenty of free information, as much as I can, so you can get started. I get people contacting me and DMing me all the time. You guys did. You guys reached out to me, and I'm all about speaking, and I'm all about educating. After this show, I'm doing a class for the University of Cincinnati for their students because they don't know anything about it. I did a class for University of Maryland, Florida State Law School. To my thing is, these people coming out, these are going to be the movers and shakers, just like you guys. And a lot of times people are like, oh, he's so nice, and oh, he's doing this. No, it's self-serving, because when you guys become rock stars, you're going to remember that I talked to you when you didn't know anything.
No, it's awesome. And, even if you look at the space, like, you can own an ETF and not have to worry about it. But if you're personally invested, there's a lot of volatility in the space. Different names are known for different things. Different companies are known for different things. But before we get down that rabbit hole, I want to ask you, how much can you take from your experience of learning what it was like to work with African governments and apply it to the situation in Italy, or is it completely different?
That's a great question. And from personal experience, I didn't have to deal with the African government. So it went great.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So that's a classic game of Entrepreneur 101. What you don't know, go find somebody else that knows that. And so the team that recruited me and recruited U.S. Cannabis was a team that had the connections with the African governments, but didn't understand cannabis. So it was interesting. So I was able to bring that flavor in. And when I came in, it kind of completed the package. So they went back to the government and they said, and this is where being an American was very handy, because they go, this is our cannabis expert. And they look at our name, U.S. Cannabis Pharmaceutical, be like, okay, these guys are from America. So in Africa, they would stereotype us and be like, well, this is where all the marijuana is, so these guys must know. So it actually helped each other. And then in Italy, we've worked through our research director, is Dr. Nick Campagna. He lives in Italy, and so he's very involved in cannabis research. So he was able to make those connections for us. And so that's where it comes into team. It's like every part of the team has to work together. So he was able to make the connections. I was able to bring in the cannabis flair. Our CEO, Jeremy Lewis over there, he was able to bring in the contractual negotiations from a financial side. So everybody works together. And then we have a great guy on the ground named Gustav in Lesotho. He travels into Lesotho from South Africa, but he handles all the things on the ground. And by working together, we can really move mountains. And so one of the things I'm extremely proud of is in less than 5 months of being in Africa, we were the first company to ever export product out of Lesotho, and it went to Australia. And then we just shipped out 15 kilos of CBD and THC crude oil from Lesotho to Australia. And Australia, it was a publicly traded medical cannabis company, and they said it was the best product they'd ever received. And they received product from Europe as well as Canada, which I went like, whew, so that's good. So,
that's huge.
So you have to depend on your partners. And so one of the benefits, if you're not familiar with Africa at all, is they've been having cannabis there for thousands of years. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Malawi Gold. It's a brand in cannabis. And so our company is called MGMC Pharma, which is Malawi Gold Management Corporation. So we wanted to make a play off of that, but not be in your face. And so our goal in Africa is to develop the entire ecosystem and infrastructure to handle global cannabis trade. Think OPEC. OPEC is a bunch of countries that come together to handle the petroleum industry. What we want to do is create the private industry for cannabis products to be able to do mass production at lower cost, to be able to export this all over the world. Because everybody in the United States wants legalization. 90% of all legal sales of cannabis happen in the United States. The problem is, if we go to legalize, currently 10% of the population in legal states use recreational cannabis. So if we have 350 million people in the United States, that means overnight we're going to have 35 million users theoretically. do you think that we have the capacity to keep up with 35 million cannabis users a month with domestic production?
Nope.
We don't. So where's that going to come from? It's got to come from somewhere else. So what we're planning on, we want to build the infrastructure so large that when America says we're getting ready to legalize, we can have all the domestically grown flower used for smoking, and then we can import oil, high quality, low cost oil, to keep all the processors busy across America. Because if we don't do that, then what you're going to see is the black market's going to go through the roof. Nobody's going to go to the stores because it's too expensive, and we're not going to get the tax money. So we have already thought about this problem way into the future, and we're working on ways to fix that now. And so I can tell you, one of my dreams is to be on a C-130 going from Lesotho flying into Miami, and I've got 50 gallon drums of THC oil on there and a caption saying, I'm moving more product than Pablo Escobar. That's my dream. That's my dream. Legally, of course. Yeah. So I want
cowboy right here.
Right. I want to sit there and really push the envelope to where we can make, I mean, I hate to use this, but I want to make America the epicenter of cannabis innovation. And I want to bring U.S. manufacturers overseas to help out over there and bring their capital, because America is a leader in the world and we have to get back to that place. And so we're doing whatever we can to help make that happen.
And you had mentioned, crude and raw product flowers as opposed to, a processed finished product. In the medical cannabis space, would the major pharmaceutical companies be the ones responsible for processing their own product, or what does that all look like?
Well, it's interesting. So right now, the largest buyer outside the U.S. and outside the U.S. period is Germany. So Germany currently has a medical cannabis structure. They have about 120,000 patients. So to put that in perspective, Florida has almost 500,000 patients. So it's just getting started. In Europe last year, they total revenues for cannabis sales was $250 million, and in the United States it was $13.5 billion estimated. So a little different, but they're coming up. So what we're seeing in Germany right now is 75% of all sales are cannabis flower. And somebody who's been in the business for this long, there was this term that kept coming up called floss. F-L-O-S. And I'm like, okay, guys, I've been doing this a while. I don't know what floss is. They said all it is cannabis prepackaged flour in small jars, basically. So this is how they're selling it in Germany. And then there's only 25% that's oil or extracts. What we're seeing is they're going to follow the same thing that happened over here. They're going to see flour use decline, and they're going to see oil use increase, because you can't get exact dosing with flour and nobody smokes medicine. Okay. They'll get, right now there hadn't been enough oil over there, so they had to do whatever they could. So what I see happening is we're seeing diversification or specialization within the industry. So our thing that we're specializing on right now in Africa is raw product, raw crude, raw THC and CBD, and then we ship it out to our partners who are GMP, which is good manufacturing practices, certified. They put it into a final product and then they ship it on to the customer, because we have the lowest cost of production almost in the world. So it doesn't make sense for us, for a company in Australia or Europe to grow cannabis, but it makes more sense to us to ship in a small little package of oil, and then they can make, hundreds of doses of whatever they want, and they can modify it as much as they want. So I use the example of us as a sugar company. So we produce a lot of sugar, but we don't bake the cakes and the muffins. We just send the sugar so they make whatever they want. And so that's what we see in the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry will always need an API, or active pharmaceutical ingredient. So if you're making opiates, you're going to need your base product, which is opium. Well, if you're making cannabis tinctures, your base product is cannabis crude. So right now we're focusing on crude. Over time, we'll move into more finished product. But the number one thing on the European and global markets outside the U.S., it's not about the product. It's all about the paperwork. Because you don't have the right paperwork. Imagine sitting in Berlin and waiting for a plane to arrive of 500 kilograms of THC crude, and you don't have the right paperwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going to be a little nervous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a good day. So, we ship out product here in the States, hemp flower. By the way, hemp flower is becoming a really big thing overseas. So we're shipping it over there, and 2 shipments out of 5 have got stuck in customs for months because they don't know what it is, they don't know how to test it. So we're really at the early stage, but specialization is definitely starting to take hold, and we're going to see more of that as we move forward.
Yeah, so interesting because it sounds like we obviously want more people to have access, bring this to the masses. So where along the supply chain, like what's the worst part of the supply chain right now? And also, who gets hurt in this process?
Well, the supply chain, what's the worst part right now is the physical sending of it, is getting the proper documents from well, like for me, it's getting the proper documents from your host country and getting those to be accepted by the receiving country. That's the number one issue. We have so much product in Lesotho and South Africa, we could literally send 500 kilograms a month. But the problem is it's all about the paperwork. If you don't have the correct paperwork, and a lot of that paperwork centers around good manufacturing practices. So since we didn't create this in the United States, Europe took the lead and they created EU or European Union good manufacturing practices. Well, the challenge to get full EU Gmp certification can take 2 years. So if you're a startup, like you hear about these licenses in the United States where they're starting and running in 6 months. Well, you can't do that overseas. It takes millions of dollars. You have to go through the process. You have to have somebody physically come inspect your facility from Germany or Europe. Well, nobody's traveling right now. So how do you do that? So that's the number one issue on top of everything. And in regards to who gets hurt, it just depends on where you are in the world. Like right now in Africa, I think we're helping people. The way we work, because we're providing jobs, our long-term plan as we get larger is to do what we call compassionate pricing. So compassionate pricing is going out and growing it so cheap that we can sell unit-dosed tablets to the African governments because they can't afford brand name drugs. So we want to work on the slogan, Buy Africa for Africa. And then we eventually want to move into Buy Africa for the world, because people have been coming to Africa for thousands of years and raping and pillaging the land and the people. We want to turn that on its head and say, you know what, Africa, this is your chance to save the planet. Let's make all the best medication here and let's ship it all over the world, and everybody benefits along the way. So our plan to do that, to increase scale quickly, is to be able to train and educate the farmers and have the farmers go out and grow it. And then we process that oil. So we pay the farmers, everybody wins. They're getting a livable wage in Africa terms, not in other places terms, but living wage there. And then they're part of the global society. And so that has been the biggest challenge to me in the States, as well as in South Africa. Right now, the issue in South Africa is all the well-to-do Africans, the poorer blacks are very upset because they're not getting access to these licenses for cannabis production. It's literally the same thing you're hearing in the United States. So those people, I feel, are I don't know if they're getting screwed, but they're having limited options. And so a lot of times I tell people, you know, not everybody's going to be a CEO. So just because you want to run a company doesn't mean that you should run a company, because maybe you get in and you become their director of operations. Maybe you help with their financing. Maybe you use your skills as whatever it is, a life insurance agent, and you handle all the contracts, or you handle whatever. So I think a lot of times people only think I have 1 or 2 jobs I can do, but in reality, they can use their base of knowledge to either create a position or form into a team and become part of a team to do exactly what they want to do.
Got it. And you mentioned a couple of times throughout the conversation hemp. I know there's many industrial applications of hemp, but we haven't spent a lot of time there. Can you talk about where you see that space going?
I am so bullish on hemp. Hemp is going to be a lot bigger than medical cannabis all over the world, and we want to demonstrate that with our research zone. And so one of the things that we're working on in Africa is, well, we haven't done it yet, but our plan is, have you seen those 3D printers that print houses now?
I've heard about them. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube and you just do 3D printed houses, they're doing it with concrete. What we want to do is we want to be able to do that with hempcrete. And we have the capacity to go to the UN, the World Bank, to be able to get funding. So imagine if we could start developing houses that are 1,000 square feet houses in Africa for $5,000 each, and we could start building housing there, and then eventually move that forward in the innovation through the research zone here, is to develop those techniques. So that's what we're really bullish about, because the hemp plant is something that we all know it has 25,000 different uses, but we don't have the infrastructure and the financial resources and the funding through grant money to be able to explore all this. And so this is what the research zone in Florida that we want to create, to where we can figure all this stuff out through R&D, and then we can implement it across the world. So if we're talking about hemp clothes, we need to research what is the easiest, what is the best strain for cannabis hemp clothes, what is the best, or hemp clothes, what is the best way to manufacture those hemp clothes, and what is the cheapest way to get it to market, and use that knowledge. And then that's what the pharmaceutical industry does. So we want to create that innovation, and to where it's not just medical products from hemp like CBD, CBN, tinctures, CBDA. We want to develop the industrial side to where eventually cars are made of hemp, batteries are made of hemp, which can help save the planet. So we're extremely bullish on that. And that's where we feel like the research zone is going to come in. And I got to tell you this, that the research zone, when you talk about funding, and you're talking 50, 60, $70 million to get this off the ground. And so with our support with the Florida Hemp Council, a great guy named Jeff Green, we're very close to securing funding of that size through a large-scale financial firm that everybody would know who they are in the United States, which would be unheard of 2 years ago. So we see the tide turning. Also, to be honest about hemp can create hundreds of thousands of jobs for America. It's America manufacturing. And Biden always talks about American manufacturing. Well, if I have my say, I'm going to be up in the White House saying, this is American manufacturing. Let's start dumping some money into it, because this will create thousands and thousands of jobs, and we can export this product around the world. And what we see happening specifically on the clothing side is you're going to start like, I call it the Tesla effect. You're going to start with high-end clothes. You get a Versace or somebody to do some stuff and some handbags, and then it trickles down to the average Joe. And that's how we have change. And so we're very bullish on that. We really want to see that move forward. And it's just going to take some time. But now with this potential change in the government, I think this is the right time to make stuff happen.
That's a great insight and thread to pull off, because that offers the diversification that's still available in the space. Similar to that, what is your research and what's your view on cannabis-infused drinks? I'm starting to see more and more of that out there. And recently, Afria, they just completed a $300 million merge with Sweetwater Brewing. So they are diversifying their product offerings. They're getting into distribution of drinks. Where do you see that?
Well, drinks are interesting for me because I love it. I love it when big companies are wrong and I'm right. Let me just start there. So I made 2 years ago when cannabis, CIBs, they call them, cannabis-infused beverages. CIBs came out, and then Canopy came out, and the Constellation, who owns Canopy. So their current CEO, not Bruce Linton, the new guy who's bald, I can't remember his name. He came from Constellation. He was their CFO. Well, Constellation makes Corona beer. They're used to doing sales of beer. He came out and said, he said, it's literally laughable. He said 20% of the cannabis market is going to be cannabis-infused beverages in 2 years. I'm like, dude, you're smoking your own product, okay? And let me tell you why. What I tell you why is, if you're a regular user, are you going to take 10 milligrams in a drink like this that costs $8? Yeah. Or are you going to sit there and do one little edible that you can carry around in your pocket? And I'm going to pay $8 for this, or I'm going to pay $40 for 30 doses of an edible.
Right.
So who is going to be your market? Your market, in my opinion, is going to be tourists. Your market is going to be people just trying something as a novelty. People on a Friday night saying, hey, I want to try something different. We got a 6-pack of cannabis drinks. Let's try those. So I think there is a market, but right now, through their own internal studies, and this is where I love when I'm right, 2 months ago, it came out that the cannabis-infused beverage market in Canada was only 1%. And I was like, told you, but nobody wants to listen to me, so that's fine. So I think cannabis-infused beverages will pick up steam. I don't think they're going to be 20% of the market. I think in another 2 to 3 years, they'll probably be 5, maybe 10% of the market. But remember, until you get to the point where you can make it shelf stable, because they're still having trouble with that. It's still having difficulty. So shelf stable, and you have to deal with pricing. If you could get the price of a 6-pack down to the price of edibles for the same price, maybe. But a lot of people don't sit around the game and sit there and drink a cannabis-infused beverage. Maybe they'll start doing that. But a lot of people still, like for me, I like to have a beer every once in a while. I'm not a big beer drinker. But if I'm sitting watching a game, I'm typically usually drinking a soda or I'm drinking a beer or two, and then I'll hit the vape pen or whatever, so it'll be interesting. I think the younger generation will probably make CIBs bigger. I think the older generation is so used to smoking that they really don't understand drinks. But I think there is a place, but it's just not going to be as big as all these big companies talk about. And then I want to address something else. If you're out there and you're like, oh, I'm just starting and I don't know this, and all these publicly traded companies have all this money and they know all this stuff, let me tell you something. They don't know all that stuff. Okay, I'm just telling you right now. Out of all the CEOs that have run Canopy, Aurora, Tilray's still there, but outside of Tilray, they're all gone.
Yeah.
And why? It's because they were opportunists. They knew how to raise money. They knew how to raise hype. And now we're getting into a situation where the companies that are publicly traded, they actually have to earn money. Okay?
Yeah.
What a shocker. So this is kind of like the .com. So a lot of times I tell people when you're dealing with stocks, where we are right now in the market for cannabis, we're at March 2009. And if you don't remember, March 2009 was the lowest of the stock market after the crash and coming back up. And it hasn't been that low since. Where we are in cannabis right now, we're in March 2009. And with this the vote that just happened 2 days ago, and then the new administration theoretically coming in, you're going to start to see those cannabis stocks start rising slowly, but on a more predictable path, kind of like the .coms did after the crash. So we want to be one of those companies that came after the crash. Amazon, Google, Facebook, all those, WhatsApp, all those companies. And so this is what we see happening in the cannabis space. Also, what we see happening in the cannabis space is these conglomerates, Curaleafs, True Leaves of the world. We went head to head in True Leaf in West Virginia for a license, and we beat them.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, I do
that was a good day.
How is True Leaf opening? They opened like 63 stores in Florida. They're expanding in Florida. How is it successful there and not in West Virginia? Is this just like a state law thing, or?
That is a great question. So we're going to get into a little bit of Florida politics. Okay, so through court cases, and this has been proven, this is not my speculation, they basically had the connections to get a license, if you know what I'm saying. So there were 5 licenses originally, and the way it works in Florida is it's called vertical integration. You have to do it all. You have to grow it, you have to process it, and you have to open your own stores. So when they did that, they got in early. They had the financial backing. They had the backing from the state government who they got the license from. And that's been proven in court that their application really wasn't that good. So they really didn't have to do a lot of work. They had to fill out some paperwork and have the connections to get a license. And so once they had a couple stores, they had no competition. So right now, True Leaf runs about 60% of the market in Florida. And that market share continues to decline, but their revenues continue to increase. And the reason for that is we have about 5,000 patients a week that are signing up for Florida medical cannabis. So the license, now what they've done now is, this is the only other license that was a scored application. So for your listeners and viewers, a scored application is where you're going to have limited number of licenses and you have to apply. For example, in West Virginia, there was over 40 applicants for licenses, but only 10 licenses. So only 10 out of 41. And truly, this is the first time that I'm aware they had to go up against a scored application other than Florida, which they basically had the political connections to get. And so this time they didn't, and they lost. So Kim Rivers is the CEO. I know Kim Rivers. She knows of me. I got nothing against her. She used her skills that she had at the time to get what she needed. And so to me, True Leaf has done a lot of good things. They've really pushed the envelope. They're the most profitable cannabis company in America right now. But what they're doing to grow right now is just doing it through acquisition. So they just bought the license in Pennsylvania for 60-some million. They bought a license in Massachusetts. They bought one out by you guys in California. But 97% of their income comes from Florida. And so once they legalize federally, then you're going to see them come everywhere. I do know they're going to come into Georgia. If you're unfamiliar, Georgia did pass medical cannabis. They haven't done the applications for licensure yet. So due to COVID, it was all pushed back. But they have connections into Georgia, so I'm assuming they'll get a license there. So they're going to grow. You're going to have that nepotism. You're going to have those people doing backdoor deals in any industry. And so if you're like, well, I'm just not going to get involved because I don't have a chance. Well, if you give up before you start, absolutely. You're never going to have a chance. And so, I never had a chance until 8 years in, into where I was able to build up, and through hard work, I was able to create opportunities. And so that's what you have to do in this business. I've had to go into so many times. Let me give you a perfect example. So there's a company called GLG. GLG is Gerson Lehrman Group. And what these guys and girls do is they have an international investment consulting firm. So if you are a large venture capital fund and you want to invest in soybean manufacturing in Thailand, then they will go find you somebody who has experience with manufacturing soybeans in Thailand, and you'll talk to that person and get that information for what you need for this investment. Well, I started doing that in 2013 with them, and when I started doing that, they had a couple clients asking me and who requested me, and GLG didn't really understand the market. So I had to come to them and say, look, I'm not telling you what to do, but what I think you should do is you should have it to where you have webinars to where you bring all your clients on, and I could do a class or somebody else to start educating people about cannabis, and then you'll get more referrals and that'll make you more money. Also, I think you need to have it to where you bring people together. This is pre-COVID. Bring people together, and then all your executives can talk to a guy like me in a room, and we can really go through these things and kind of get to know each other, because you really have to bring corporate America in. Well, at the time, they shooed me away. Yeah, you don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. 6 months later, I get a call. This is Susie from so-and-so at GLG, and we were thinking about doing this project where we do a webinar, and then you would do a presentation. I was like, what a great idea. That is such a great idea. I would love to do it. So I made it their idea. But the point is, in cannabis is nobody understands, or a lot of people don't understand the industry. And if you want to get into the industry and you're like, well, I could do this, and this is the job I can do. Unless you explain that to people, then they don't understand it. Because I do that all the time. So, there's a couple of things that are about to hit for me nationally. So you're going to see that come out. And so I've had to behind the scenes, I've been working with a lot of these national companies to put that bird in their ear saying, this is where we're going. This is what you're going to need. And then what I've learned is just the way humans operate is if it's your idea, then you're more likely to do it. So I plant the seed, it becomes your idea, and we still get to where we want to go. So that's just an example of having to be innovative in this space, because people who are going to hire you or do work business with you who've never dealt with you or your company before, they may not understand how to market you. Like, perfect example, I hired a publicist, and I didn't know how to do that. Well, I had a guy I was doing a hemp deal with in Tennessee, and ironically, he was the producer for a song called Achy Breaky Heart. I'm sure y'all have heard about it.
Absolutely, yep.
Right. You probably hated it, but this guy made a lot of money on it. So he's in the hemp trade now, and he introduced me to promoters who work for large record companies in the country music business for years. Well, these people still have connections to get on Today's Show, Good Morning America, all these places, and they're really interested in cannabis. And I said, well, why don't we work something out to where they can help promote me? I can educate them about the cannabis space, and now I can expand their business into hemp and cannabis rather than just country music, because you're going to the same places, you're going to the same media outlets, and so they love the idea, but I still have to educate them on how to market me. So if I end up on Good Morning America in 3 months, I made the announcement on your show, so you can
heard it here first.
Yeah, I heard it here first.
Got
your own seed to plant operation.
Right, and so that's why if you're listeners, you really have to just connect. What I tell people all the time is this job is all about connecting dots. If you connect the dots and you can see it and you can show other people, then eventually they'll see it too, and then you start moving forward.
Great advice.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. I just can't help but think about, you mentioned connecting the dots. I can connect the dots right now in terms of people probably need help with financial planning as it relates to the cannabis business. So, how hard it is to get liquid money for a new dispensary. That's just one layer of it. I would imagine there's a space for more financial literacy within the cannabis world.
But that's a great comment, and let me give you a great example of that. So when I was doing a class for the University of Maryland master's program, so it's the world's first master's in cannabis science and therapeutics, which is amazing. So I'm like, whatever they're doing, I need to help them. So the first class was 150 people, and so they have what they call a professional Q&A. So I got on this just like this about a month ago, and they had about 75 people on, and it was a basic Q&A where myself and a couple other experts got on, and the students could just ask questions. Well, this one guy was from Florida. He was a financial analyst, and he was getting a master's in cannabis science and therapeutics. So I was just so fascinated with him. He asked me a couple questions. He's like, well, I'm in the financial sector, and I can't tell anybody I'm doing this because it's illegal federally. How do I get a job in it? And I said, well, let's talk to me offline because this is going to take a while. And I said, you don't so if you can't tell, I'm pretty blunt. And I'm like, you are sitting on the golden ticket and you don't even know what it is. He goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, do you understand how many people in the financial sector know what you know about cannabis? He goes, yeah, nobody knows that. They really don't know about it. Okay, so rather than looking to go grow cannabis, why don't we go to a recruiter and not use your name and say, hey, financial people, I've got the golden ticket because the guy you want to get in the hall of cannabis and you don't know anything about it. I got the guy who knows what you know and he knows everything about cannabis. And he's like, I never thought about that. So the lesson is go with what you know. So if you were in the financial sector, go out and educate everybody on how to do pitch decks. How do you do a business plan with cannabis? How do you do a business plan with dispensary? Do a lot of bartering. Say, hey, I know you're doing a dispensary. Do you need help with pitch decks? Do you need help with me doing your financials? What are you going to do? You're going to do a lot of work, but you're going to learn. They're going to teach you about the business and you're going to teach them about finance. And then from that relationship, you're going to meet other people and have another relationship. Like, let me give you another example. So I did a speech in a conference in Barbados in February before COVID and never been to Barbados, very cool place. And I met this guy named Sheldon, and Sheldon was from Massachusetts, but he's a Barbados native. He flew back home to come to this conference. Well, he was saying, he goes, well, my background's in laboratory and I don't really know what to do. And I really want to get into cannabis and I live in Boston. And I said, well, what do you know? He goes, well, I'm working on this patent on how to do processing of oils, and I think I can make the process bigger and have more bioavailability. I'm like, okay, we'll focus on that. And in the meantime, see if you can go work in a cannabis lab, learn more about it as an employee, and then you come back and work for your patent. I talked to him today. He got his patent approved.
Good for him.
He's been busting his butt. So now we're going to help him to be able to make that patent usable here in the States. And then what we're looking to do as we grow, we can work with him to get it as an international patent. We can use it from our customers and our clients to be able to help our products. And so not only am I benefiting him, he's benefiting me. And so a lot of times I always try to help as many people as I can, because eventually my whole philosophy is I need everybody else to up their game, because the way we're moving and how fast we're moving, I need all of them to do it. So when they're ready, I know I already need them, and I need to get them ready for when I need them. So if I don't need them, other people will. So perfect example with this patent, with this processing thing, I can go to companies and pharmaceutical companies, say, I have an international patent on how to do this. Well, think about it. When you have a product, you're like, our product is patented to do da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
You're like, wow. And it all goes back to trust. And that's
Yeah.
what we talked about off air. The number one thing in business is trust. And the number one way to gain business and get in this industry and be successful is to get people to trust you. If you can sell trust, you can sell anything. So everything you do as an organization has to be wrapped around trust. Full disclosure, all that type of stuff. Because that's the only way long term, in my opinion, you're going to be successful in this business.
Absolutely. And I guess one final question I would have is, what are the major risks currently facing medical cannabis, and I guess rec cannabis as well? I know you've made a tremendous amount of progress bringing the ball down the field, but are there, one or two things that could happen that might really derail this progress that you're looking out for?
How much time you got?
So
right now the risks are a lot lower. Like when I started, it was so risky. One of my business partners, his name's Michael Vischer, he started a cannabis dispensary in 2009 in Denver.
Wow.
And he said it was literally like somebody would bring in a trash bag full of weed and say, what do you want? There was no lab testing. There was no inspection. It was just like, hey man, what do you got? So I think nowadays, the biggest thing that I see as a limiting factor or risk is a drug test. A lot of states still drug tests for medical cannabis. In the state of Florida, you can still be fired if you're a medical cannabis patient. There's no protections. The state of Pennsylvania has overruled that, so now you are protected in New Jersey as well as Pennsylvania. So I tell people, if you're going to become a medical cannabis patient, which I am, check your state law and understand the law. That would be the number one concern. The other concerns are like the concern I mentioned to you in Tennessee, where the lady got before on air. She got arrested for having hemp in her car, and she had a certification to have a hemp license. So it's the education of law enforcement. The law enforcement we dealt with, ironically, we trained the FBI, Florida State Troopers, and sheriffs on cannabis law in Florida. And as an aside, that conference, every attendee got a free gun. Which is yes. So I was like,
such a Florida thing,
right? Isn't it? And everybody, well, they're all police, but like, hey, everybody come today gets a free gun. I was like, way, where's mine? So we, we educate law enforcement. Law enforcement wants they want to be educated, and the biggest thing I see about law enforcement, and from that FBI conference we did, is they came up to us afterwards and they said, look, cannabis is not our problem. Crystal meth, opiates, alcohol is our main problems, and so we don't care about cannabis. We're so glad that it's legal, so we don't have to deal with it anymore. And I thought that was great, because this is where we're all starting to work together. We're all starting to see that this is good for society. It's not bad. We're finding that crime is decreasing in states where cannabis is legal. We're finding crime is decreasing in the area of a dispensary where we have good regulation, like Florida, even California. They've done studies to show that cannabis dispensaries in neighborhoods actually decrease crime. So I think that when we get the truth shall set us free, as the data keeps coming out and realizing nobody's ever died from cannabis in human history, and the younger generation, you guys and younger who come through to realize you've only grown up in legal states, the stigma will continue to decline and the business will continue to increase. The challenge that I see moving forward is having good regulation that everybody can understand and everybody gets behind, so we can move forward as a unit from because that's what brings in the money, and that's what we need to move this forward, is a huge capital influx. So all these types of companies can start to start growing and getting bigger and really start to dominate global trade, and that's what we want America to do.
Couldn't think of a better way to end it, and this is exactly why you need to follow Michael Patterson on LinkedIn, because this is the type of insight you get almost on a daily basis. And so great work out of you. I mean, really looking forward to the momentum continuing to build in this space. And yeah, you heard it here first.
You did. And let me tell you, I'm coming back on the show once I go national. I got a lot of things in the cooker. So when I come national, I'm going to put all this information back, promote the show. We're going to get everybody on the show. And we're going to play back the video where I announced I was going to do all this and give Rising Lottery all the credit. It's going to be fun. I can't wait.
We'll hold you to it. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.